All right.
Welcome in. Here we are. The Oscars have happened and we are live reacting. I'm Tim Melton, broadcasting not from the Culver studio, which breaks my heart because I love Culver's. We also have Jon Lunsford and Laurel Lunsford. Guys, the Oscars have wrapped and there's a lot to talk about for sure. But overall, would you say that it was a good Oscars broadcast?
Overall, yes. Was it the best ever? No. Were there plenty of issues? Absolutely. Were there plenty of complete swings and misses? Absolutely.
I was kind of worried when the monologue started. I just feel like there has not really been a good monologue this award season. Even though I'm not a huge fan of this person, I think that John Mulaney needs to host the Oscars next time. I thought that he would probably have been a better choice than I think Jimmy Kimmel's just kind of run the course. I mean, he did fine. It wasn't horrible, but
I mean, they're no Joe Coy, but
there were a few that got of rough.
We're going to get into all the nooks and crannies of this Oscar broadcast because there are a lot of things to react to for sure. But overall, I thought it was a great broadcast that celebrated the films themselves and celebrated the performances this year, whether that be musically or on screen. Obviously, I'm a huge Oppenhomie, and I am very excited celebrating tonight that Oppenheimer won Best Picture. We'll just start with that. Not really, we'll work up to it, but I'm going to take a sip in celebration of Oppenheimer. Here we go. The taste of victory. It's a sweet thing. All right, let's talk a little bit about the fact that this is an Oscars broadcast that started an hour earlier than normal.
I love it.
It was a little strange. It was a little strange to me having the Oscars happen that early, but I hope that they stick with this. I hope it wasn't just a daylight savings time thing.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it. So we were in Nashville last night, came home this morning, and then Laurel was looking at her phone. It's like, oh, it starts at, I guess 6 o'clock here, but that's 4 o'clock out there. It's like, oh, it'll be daytime. I guess it's daytime anyway out there because it would have been 5 there and then 7 here. But I kind of like it. It was 9:30. It ended on time, by going 6 to 9:30 instead of, I guess, 7 to 10:30 is what it normally is scheduled for. But I have no problem with the earlier start time. I can go to bed an hour earlier now because of all this.
And I feel like it got all the awards in because I know that's something that we talked about on the show is, how it's like, I remember a few years ago, they did some of the awards on the red carpet and it was like the awards like for screenplay, which is a pretty big award. And I feel like that one should be televised for people to see. So I'm glad that this was able to get all of them in.
Yeah, the worst was the Grammys this year. They had, of course, the Grammys between all the genres and everything. There's a million plus production and all that. But they literally gave away like 8 awards in the entire show, and that was it. I think there's 23 Oscars. And I feel like if you're having an award show, you should give away all the awards on the show. So I think they spaced it out decently. I never thought like, man, it's been like 30 minutes and they haven't given an award yet. So I thought overall it was a well planned out show. The hour early, honestly, I can take it or leave it. I just like the fact that now I'm going to bed an hour earlier with losing time on daylight savings time, but I don't know if they'll move it back next year or not.
Jon, you may be a little digitized on my end. I don't want to try to coordinate this live on the stream here, but I don't know if it's that case on air or if it's not, because this is our first time sort of being away from the studio. But I just want to make sure I get all of that juicy, critical content that I need. And if there is some magic button you can push, I'd love for you to push it. But I love a good movie montage. This whole thing started off with a movie montage.
It was so good. That was one of the best ones I think that they've had in a long time. It was because I think all the movies were really good. This was a really strong year.
Yeah, it was a strong year. And seeing all those movies put on the screen at the same time, it was a fantastic feeling. I thought the Jimmy Kimmel Barbie bus stop scene was really good too, to start off the show. And then he thanked the partial standing ovation and talked a lot about Greta Gerwig, who you're supporting there on your shirt, Laurel.
Oh, I have to say, and I do not care what anyone says, Ryan Reynolds stole the show. Like, that was the best performance. Was it not?
We're going to give Ryan Reynolds his flowers. I know that he's just Ken, but we're talking about Greta Gerwig right now. Let's get some Greta Gerwig love in here.
I'm a little surprised. I still am surprised she wasn't nominated for director. I just feel like, but I feel that way about a lot of movies, that if they're nominated for Best Picture and all the actors are nominated, the script is nominated, it's like, did the movie direct itself? But there's only this small frame for people that you can allow. And I think she's got a big career. I think that she has now, with this movie, with Barbie making $1 billion, that's catapulted her into a whole new level. Well, I think she will be looked at with the big directors, especially young and upcoming, because she's cool and hip. That's what they're looking for. And I think I would love to see her and Nolan collaborate. I just would love to see. I think she would too. I think they seem to have a good repertoire, so I'd be interested to see if they would ever work together.
She may not have gotten the nomination, but she sure did get a lot of attention and acclaim tonight during the broadcast, starting off with that. Then there was a shift to Oppenheimer, some drug jokes with Robert Downey Jr. That's a big swing, but I actually thought it hit pretty well, and Robert Downey Jr. sold it, that he was sort of okay with the joke. And that worked out well. The Achievement in Casting Award that's coming up, that was mentioned there in the monologue, I'm very excited about that, John. For years, I have felt like casting directors deserve an opportunity to win an Oscar. It is arguably the most important part of any film, is getting the right group of people together on screen.
I think if that had been a category this year, I think Barbie would have won that. And see, I think this is another way. It's kind of like the SAG Awards, how they have like the casting. And I feel like you could have a Best Picture winner, but then you also have casting, which is kind of similar.
Hold on. So here's the thing. It's going to be just like the SAG Awards. I think for the next however many years, you're going to win Best Cast if you win Best Picture. SAG Awards basically give Best Picture to the best overall cast. So Oppenheimer won that. But the thing is, a movie like Oppenheimer both movies had an ensemble cast with it, but for Oppenheimer to ultimately be the choice, it's going to win Best Cast.
Tie, because I feel like they were so conjoined the whole time.
But like,
they should have had a tie.
It's only going to be when a movie like, I'm trying to think of an example, like maybe Moonlight. When Moonlight won Best Picture, it maybe wouldn't win Best Cast, because even though it won an acting award with Mahershala Ali, the main characters in it were no names for the most part. You had 3 decent names in it, and that was about it. So maybe a movie like that wouldn't win cast, but La La Land would have won Best Cast that year, and easily obviously could have won Best Picture. Oppenheimer would definitely win it this year. I feel like unless it's an absolute crazy offshoot weird thing like Moonlight was, because that was kind of obviously in a lot of people's minds an upset, it's always going to be the exact same. So I feel like it's just going to be another thing for the Best Picture winner to ultimately win every year.
One thing I promise with this recap show is that we're going to get into almost every angle of not only the awards, but also film commentary and some celebrity reaction as well. And I promise this will not go all night long. So let me know if we reach the 3.5 hour mark at any point, John. Let's move on to this. And that is all of the former acting award winners coming out. The first time we saw this tonight was in the Best Supporting Actress award. I was wondering, are they going to do this for every award? That was my initial thought. And I was like, there's no way they're going to do it for every award. At first, it felt a little long in the tooth. It went 5 minutes to just get to who ended up winning. But I really started to fall in love with that format of bringing all of these different actors out from all different backgrounds and enjoying them giving the flowers to the people who would eventually end up not winning the award. So that way, at least the losers went home with something tonight. But what did you think of just that format?
Well, I know John will probably have a similar thing. I liked how after the Best Supporting Actress, and I also enjoyed it. I thought that was good to have, and that brings a lot of star power too. But after the first category, they did it for Supporting Actress. They were like, "Oh, this is my friend. This is my friend. Like, this is my best friend." They abandoned that when they got to the other categories, because you can tell some of these people have probably never interacted before.
I get what they're trying to do, but like when Jennifer Lawrence was doing Lily Gladstone, I'm like, these two have probably never said a word to each other ever in their life, because Lily Gladstone was an unknown before doing this movie, and Jennifer Lawrence, being young, hasn't been around the scene forever. That I feel like, because Laurel's right, she pointed out, they all said, "My friend so-and-so," and it's like, how on earth did these two people know each other? And occasionally they would have done a movie together.
They actually did it a few years ago, and who was up there for Best Actor tonight? Who were the 5 people?
So there was Matthew McConaughey.
Brendan Fraser, Kingsley, Forrest Whitaker, and Nicolas Cage.
Sam Rockwell. Oh, I'm sorry. That was Best Supporting. Yeah.
They did this a few years ago, and Forrest Whitaker he did it but they had it for people who hadn't won. It was actually people that were friends. And that is how I figured out that Forrest Whitaker directed Hope Floats. It's a romantic movie with Sandra Bullock. I had never known that, but he was up there for, it's when she was nominated for Gravity. And I said, that is something I have learned new. I never knew that he directed Hope Floats.
I would rather them actually do Friends, like get all 5 to be like, unless they're totally unknown, to be like the big A-list actors that you bring up there and they're actually friends with them. I would rather them do that, because if it's like, I don't know, let's say somebody like a Robert Downey Jr. before this year, had not won, but he could get up there and it's somebody who he had been in a Marvel movie with or something, that he could be the person to say, hey, this person's so great. I really like working with him. And look, Robert Downey Jr. has been nominated a bunch of times, but I don't want people up there. It's like, oh, well, this person in what movie were they in? Oh, yeah, they were in this movie. It's really good. And what did they do? Yeah, like half the people didn't even realize what they were talking about. And I know they're trying to read off a teleprompter, but I'd say maybe 50%, maybe up to 60% of those actually hit when they were talking about the actor they were actually talking about.
That's fine that you have that feeling, but the example you use is poor, because Sam Rockwell and Robert Downey Jr. worked in Iron Man 2 together, and I love that reunion.
Was only up there because he had won an Oscar. So I'm saying, don't just get Oscar winners, get anybody to go up there.
And that's what they did a few years ago. They did do that a few years ago.
So get hell, I don't know, get Chris anybody Evans from Marvel, get Chris Evans up there to talk about Robert Downey Jr.
We'll keep running through some notes I took down. I have not seen y'all's social media reactions. We're coming in completely fresh. I don't know what your opinions are on anything. All I saw was you promote, we have this live show afterwards, and I hit the retweet button and then quickly ran away from social media. So I'm going in blind here. But can we all agree that Divine Joy Randolph was the lock of all locks tonight, and she has had as good of award season as anybody? And if The Holdovers has anything to champion, it is her performance in that film first and foremost. What did you make of Lupita Nyong'o talking about her grandmother's glasses and using those in the filming to pay tribute? And it just, you could tell she was breaking down just from that moment. You knew that the Oscar speech was going to deliver. She said something that I thought was very powerful, and that she always thought she wanted to be different, and really she just wanted to be herself. What did y'all make of Divine Joy Randolph, and not just tonight, but the run that she's been on all throughout awards season?
And I think we've been watching her. I know she's probably been around much longer, but we first saw her on Only Murders in the Building. And then slowly she just started popping up in more things that we saw. Of course, that show's been on for a few years now. We saw her on The Idol. And then, of course, when we saw that she was going to be in this movie, it's like we kind of feel like we've been there since the beginning, kind of watching her career. And I like the story about the cigarettes, too, that Jimmy Kimmel told, where they said that the director said to practice with the fake cigarettes. And they said which they don't really look that real. But hopefully she didn't take it up permanently. But I like the little anecdotes, and she was the heart of that movie. I thought that she was really good. Like John, I know it was his #1 movie for the picks. So
yeah, I mean, I did like her in Only Murders in the Building. She's one of those that kind of you don't think about because it's such a crazy cast in a show like that she's just that tiny character in the back that you don't really think of. And then she kind of disappeared lately on that show, but now I realize not only was she doing that, she was also in that Rustin movie that Coleman Domingo was nominated for, as was Jeffrey Wright. I realized that movie actually had a lot of people in it, but you only know about it because Coleman Domingo got nominated. But so she's growing her career. The Idol was a terrible show, absolutely awful, but she was actually really good in it. Her and Hank Azaria were both good in it. Outside of that, The Weeknd, and despite The Weeknd being up on Lunch's list, he was awful in it. Everybody was awful in it, but I really liked her in this. She is part of what really made that. I mean, obviously Paul Giamatti, everybody's a fan of Paul Giamatti, I feel like. And he was one of those that I still kind of thought maybe of the no hope people that could still maybe have an outside chance to still pull off the win, even though it definitely was going to be Cillian Murphy. But, her, the minute she lost it on the glasses comment, I could tell, because all of her speeches so far and all the major award shows that I've watched, at least, she's been like, oh my God, what? It kills me when these people, you have to think in the back of their mind, they know, hey, Vegas thinks I'm going to win. I've won literally every other award. Billie Eilish.
It's called the Taylor Swift. That's what I call it. With all the shock.
The same thing. Oh, I had no idea I was going to win. It's like, you've literally won everything, and you were such a favorite. Literally, your only competition was Ryan Gosling, who's mostly there for fun, more so than actually winning the award. And when she gets up there and she starts shaking, and she had already lost it because of the glasses comment, it was over after that, and she didn't know what to do. And I'm glad she won. I'm glad she had that. And I hope it does lead to more in the future.
Paul Giamatti, he didn't win tonight, like you mentioned, but he won the moment because he escorted her up on the stage, which was lovely. And I saw him recently in a Criterion video where he's picking out his favorite picks, his favorite movie picks. And he said in that it's almost impossible to make him cry. It's like trying to get blood out of a stone. And it cuts to him and he's sobbing. And I found it to be extremely powerful because I had watched that clip of that YouTube video of him talking about how he's not a crier, but he definitely was crying after she won for Best Supporting Actress, and a job well done there. I still feel like in The Holdovers, there's one more scene that was left on the cutting room floor when she's in the kitchen and they're about to leave the party altogether. And I still feel like there was a little bit more of a moment there that was not featured in the actual final cut of the film, but she won the award anyway, and she gave a heck of a performance.
I was going to say, Benjamin posted in the chat, Paul Giamatti smirking the entire show, knowing the holdovers will be remembered much longer than all the rest of these winners. I agree. I do think this will be the one that has staying power because no one's going to continue to do incredible movies for a long time. Greta Gerwig and all the actors in that are going to continue doing movies. Emma Stone's going to probably win another Oscar at some point. She'll become the new Meryl Streep. But this is the movie that these people, because Paul Giamatti is getting old, he may never have another chance to win one. This girl may never win another one. The kid in it may disappear. We don't know. But this is a movie that's going to be remembered for a long, long time.
I think, Tim, you had a good point was that you brought it up, and John, I think you did too, was saying that this is a Christmas movie. And I think this will be a movie that people will watch like every year. Like it will be something that people start watching. And that is like something that Benjamin's right, that will be remembered than a lot of these other movies, because out of all the Best Picture movies, there's probably only a few that you're like, it's like, how many times can you watch Maestro? I don't know if there's like a...
Oh, okay. We're going to get into Maestro because Maestro got beat up pretty bad tonight. We'll explain why in just a little bit. I want to talk about some of the commercials during the show. There were a bunch of the commercials from the Super Bowl that made its way back into this broadcast. But there was also some new commercials, including that Rolex commercial for the Oscars, where they show a bunch of film clips and a bunch of television clips, which I found to be, that's kind of cheating, in my opinion, when you go into the world of TV to show off the Rolex. I'm not wearing a Rolex, but I thought it was a very well done commercial. We got to see it twice. What did you guys think of that? Did it stand out to you at all?
Yeah, I don't know what it's from, but I assume the James Spader clip is from Blacklist when he's sitting there wearing it. So I'm like, I don't know what movie that is.
From Marvel.
No, he's a robot in that one. Hey, it'd be funny if Ultron was wearing a Rolex. But no, look, I think the thing that drove me most nuts about that Rolex commercial was one of the first things you see. It's the second clip they show is the biggest snub of the entire Oscars, was Zac Efron holding on to his two kids at the end. And
you're right.
Of course, you're not paying attention to it at all in the movie that he has a Rolex on his watch. For all I know, they CGI'd that Rolex on there, and it's not there in the actual movie. But like that's like a super emotional moment when he's holding on to his kids and they're like, "We'll be your brothers." I mean, like tears all across the theater when that happens. And that movie didn't get a single mention the entire night other than that because it wasn't nominated for anything. So I couldn't think about anything else when I saw commercials except for, boy, that movie got snubbed.
I didn't even know it was a Rolex commercial until I thought it was just showing different like emotional movies, because that's at the end of the film where he's hugging after he's lost everything, and it's like if they're advertising. Spoiler alert. I mean, I know it's a true story, but
I mean, yeah. Look, it was a just emotional commercial that I really enjoyed, but it did cheat a little bit. And you're right, Iron Claw deserved more roses, except for that horrendous Ric Flair impersonation that I will never forgive that movie for. It completely took me out of it. But we won't get into that right now. Let's talk about the sore spot of the night for John Lunsford, probably. Best animated, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. Best animated feature, not going to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, but instead going to The Boy and the Heron. John, were you as upset as Laurel was later in the night when Ryan Gosling got shut out?
More upset, because I think we all knew Ryan Gosling wasn't going to get the win, but I thought it was going to be a battle between those two. I didn't definitely think Spider-Man was going to win because it's kind of gone back and forth throughout all award season. But I mean, for me, my number one film overall in the year was Across the Spider-Verse. The Holdovers was number 2, so that's why it's my number one of the 10 nominated. I thought Across the Spider-Verse should have been nominated for Best Picture. And compared to some of the Best Picture nominees, I think a lot of people would take Across the Spider-Verse over a lot of those.
Why do you think the Academy wasn't favorable towards it? I know it got the nomination, but why do you think it's one of those? Is it just a superhero thing? Is that a world we're still living in at this point?
I don't think it's a superhero thing because the first one won. I think it's because the first one won that it would have been the same people getting the award, basically. So, Lord Miller getting credit for it. Well, that's already happened before, and all the people behind it at Sony and all that's happened before. And look, when the third one comes out, if it sticks the landing the way the first two have been, I have no doubt it'll probably come back and win too. I think it's partially because Into the Spider-Verse had won, so this didn't. And the second was The Boy and the Heron. I can't remember the dude's name that did it, but he's done a ton of really, really good movies like Spirited Away and other stuff over in Japan that are considered some of the greatest anime, not only the greatest anime, but some of the greatest animated things in storytelling of all time. But that guy, I don't think had ever won an award. So that's the second thing. And third, the American voice cast was incredible in it. And they went out and got all kinds of massive names to come and be in it. Robert Pattinson was one of the main characters.
Who's now an Academy Award, what movie? So
yeah, Florence Pugh, who obviously was coming off Oppenheimer, going into Dune, was supposed to be last year, and then having The Boy and the Heron as well. She was the main character in it. Batista was in it. I mean, it had a ton of people in it, and I think that kind of got a lot of people more on board with it as opposed to, oh, this is some Japanese film I may or may not watch. Instead, it's like, oh, this has so-and-so in it. I'm more willing to watch it and give it a chance. Because honestly, of the animated films, those are the only two that really had a chance. Elemental, even though we talked about its success, but never had a chance. Nimona was actually really good on Netflix, but didn't have a chance. Riz Ahmed was the main person in that. But I think it's a mix of a lot of different things, not just the superhero, movie hate, because obviously it has won before.
I think we should all send our apology letters to John Lunsford for it not ending up winning and being very upset with him about it. But I think that there was something that had a bigger miss tonight than Spider-Man, and that was one set of presenters. I thought overall the night featured a lot of strong presenters, but two people who could not get the crowd to react to them at all, Melissa McCarthy and Octavia Spencer. What the heck happened? Are we still all trying to recover from, what was it, Thunder Force or whatever on Netflix?
I think that, and this happens with a lot of people, there's several people that I can think of that this happens to. I think Melissa McCarthy has just played the same role, whether that's like in her real life or her acting life. It's just kind of the same thing over and over, and it just kind of seems tiring now. I mean, I think she's a really good actress. I thought she was so funny in Bridesmaids. I thought she was
You're
great.
blaming Melissa McCarthy, right? You're not. I know you love Octavia Spencer. You're not going to go after Octavia Spencer at all. You're just going to talk about Melissa McCarthy.
I think it's because
you're being biased. Let's be honest.
Here's the thing. So Thunder Force, Octavia Spencer's done one movie since Thunder Force, and that was in 2021, in which she did Spirited, that Will Ferrell, Ryan Reynolds
she really hasn't done
Apple movie.
In years.
She literally hasn't done anything since then. It's been 3 years, and she hasn't done anything since that. That's how bad that movie was. It was a really bad movie. Look, I like Octavia Spencer too. Melissa McCarthy is really good in a supporting role. I mean, she was there for Bridesmaids. That's, I guess, looked at as maybe her best role that she's done. That movie where she was a writer, I can't remember what it was called, but it was.
She's not for real actress, like for.
She was good in that, but that was like serious acting. That wasn't like, hey, I'm going to try to be funny. Everything she does is with her husband too. Her husband directs everything that she does.
That might be the downfall, because when they started doing everything together, Tammy, that's where it started.
Oh my gosh. I like Melissa McCarthy, okay, which is why I'm giving you a little bit of a hard time, Laurel. And I also like Octavia Spencer. I thought she was incredible in Ma, a movie that you championed that I watched.
That's what she needs to be doing, is more horror.
Oh, yes, for sure. But Melissa McCarthy and her husband, I don't love that team. And Tammy, you're right, was the first sort of dose of, oh, we got a problem here. This one's missing the boat. And it surely did. You
can kind of tell from trailers. And you know what? She was good in The Little Mermaid. I think people kind of forget about that movie because we've had so many other big movies that came out this year. I really enjoyed that movie, and I thought she was a strong point of it. But it just, I don't know.
It's bad. Me and Laurel have the same exact mindset. We walked out of Dune Part 2 and goes, Javier Bardem in Little Mermaid was not that bad. He was pretty good. And it's amazing that that's what we both went to, but
That's how
really
good
our
it is.
reaction. Water is so valuable in one, and then the other one, he lives in the water. So it's like,
what he said recently? He said that he picks movies a lot of the times for his kids, and he said that he did Dune for his son, and he did The Little Mermaid for his daughter.
That's beautiful. For him to play such a psychopath in No Country for Old Men, he sure is a charming fellow. And Skyfall
has got to watch that, because even experts, like people that are psychiatrists, have said that is the most accurate portrayal of someone that is like a complete psychopath. Like that is how they act, and it's good.
How much for your shirt? That's a bad impression of that movie. Jody says Spider-Man was robbed. Richard says Spider-Man for sure was left out because of all the superhero movie hate. And Benjamin says can't stand Melissa McCarthy. Unless he's talking about Octavia Spencer, I don't think he is. I believe Melissa McCarthy, being the comedian, right, will end up getting the blame for that bomb, but it was bad. But in this segment, it featured the two movies that are still on my list of things to see. We live in Birmingham, Alabama. We don't get everything we want to see. We would go see them immediately if they were available. It's been really tough for me to coordinate seeing these two movies because they have like one showing a day. John, you've seen both of these films, though, so I'm relying on you. Laurel, you've seen both of these films, so I'm relying on you. American Fiction wins for Best Adapted Screenplay, and for Best Original Screenplay, we got Anatomy of a Fall. Talk about these two movies. They're very different films, but talk about why each one of them deserves to be the winners in these categories.
So for American Fiction first, because it beat Oppenheimer and Barbie, which going into award season, it seemed like Oppenheimer would clearly win the adapted screenplay because coming off a true story and a book and all that. And Barbie would be probably the front runner in original screenplay because it's just based off a doll. Now, look, I am not at all a Barbie defender, and I'm glad American Fiction won because I really did like that movie. But I have no idea why Barbie was adapted in this and original and everything else because it's based off a doll. That's like saying I'm going to write a book about this bottle of water. It's like, well, because that exists, it's adapted. Well, then shouldn't every movie based on a true story, of which there were some nominated for original screenplay, technically be adapted? Yeah. I mean, Maestro was an original screenplay. It's literally based off Leonard Bernstein, who's a real person and has a whole full story that he just copied. I don't mean it in a bad way, but basically copied. But anyway, I say all that to say American Fiction beating both of those is even more impressive. And Cord Jefferson that did that, he wrote a good majority of The Good Place, which is a really good show on NBC. He was a consultant for like half of Succession, randomly in there, helping to write that show as well. He's done a lot of really good work. He did the Watchmen TV show, which I really liked. It was kind of, I feel like, polarizing overall, but I really liked it. And this is his first time actually directing too. So it was kind of completely his vision. And I thought he did a good job of creating the script, building it for certain characters, casting and everything. I know that has nothing to do with the screenplay, but it all starts with the screenplay and then growing from there to kind of get the momentum behind it for people to vote for it to win something. Because, Jeffrey Wright was one of those at times you thought maybe he could slip in there and get some, votes for Best Actor, but it was always Cillian Murphy and Paul Giamatti there. It was never going to win Best Picture. He wasn't nominated for Best Director, but this is one. American Fiction is the kind of movie that needs to get its due a little bit, and this is kind of where it got its due. And I say the same thing for Anatomy of a Fall too with the original screenplay. It's when you create a screenplay and when you create scenes that like are straight up, because once again the same person wrote and directed the movie. When you create scenes that are 1,000% dialogue based and all about the specific words that are said within a courtroom drama and within arguments and stuff like that, it can be delivered great, 10 out of 10 times. But if the dialogue's not there and if it's not the correct verbiage that you're using for it and giving the right stage directions and all for it that come with the screenplay, you're not going to be able to make it work. And that's what made Anatomy of a Fall truly work. The courtroom scenes, and there's one argument scene in it. They used it during the screenplay where Sandra Hüller, the one that was nominated for Best Actress, that was also in the Zone of Interest, she's yelling at her husband in the scene. And that scene alone was why she probably got nominated for Best Actress in this. And what made that movie so good to me, it was a top 10 of the year for me. And just the sheer dialogue in both American Fiction and Anatomy of a Fall versus anything else that we saw, as good as Oppenheimer was, as good as Poor Things was, as good as all these other movies were, the dialogue was so much better in those movies.
Laurel, help me out with something. after those 2 awards were handed out, What Was I Made For was performed. And I thought the performance was outstanding. I thought it was excellent. It ended up going on to win. We'll talk about that. But there was a crowd shot of Ariana Grande in the crowd. And later on, Ariana Grande presented a award. And to me, there's just something weird about her right now. And I don't know if you have the same vibe, but
I'm not trying to be mean because I mean, I've never been a really big fan of her. I mean, she's fine. She's another person. This is kind of how I look at Zendaya and all these people that I watched since they were like little kids, basically on Nickelodeon or on Disney Channel. I can never see them as like hot or sexy because I just visualize them as these children that I watched when I was younger. But I think she has had she looks like an AI character almost. Like she's so skinny, and I feel like she used not to really look like that, but she looks like a different person.
It's plastic surgery, by the way. I'm trying to do like.
Yeah, I was wondering what was going on there. I thought it was like some sort of religious thing, or I don't know what was happening.
She's had some things going on in her personal life, and I think maybe that's transition.
She just seems out of it. And even when the Wicked trailer came on during the Super Bowl, I looked at her and went, I know a lot of that is probably makeup choices and stuff, but she looks crazy in this movie. And every time I see her, she looks crazy.
We'll probably all go see it. And you know what? We might end up loving it. I think the Wicked movie would have been great like 7 years ago. And I didn't realize this, but I actually looked up. It's been in production for years. They've had several actors and actresses that have gone through playing it. When they showed the trailer, I looked at what people were saying about it, and people said that they thought it looked like an SNL skit, like of the way that the cinematography and everything is looking.
Yes, that's fair.
It just doesn't look, and I think it's because during the strike, they probably were just trying to hurry it up. So they probably got some people that weren't even part of the original, team to do it. It just looks kind of cheap. And I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I love Wicked.
They did a movie, I don't remember how long ago it was, called like Oz the Great and Powerful. And it was like, I think James Franco played the wizard. It had like Mila Kunis and all that. And it was super cheap looking because CGI wasn't quite where it needed to be to do something like that, as opposed to the practical effects you had back in the day with the Wizard of Oz. That's what this one looks like too. And I feel like Ariana Grande, it's not the effects, it's just how she looks. I think she's had maybe a little work done, or she's lost way too much weight to where it's like skin and bones on her face, but something about her just doesn't have the same look that she's always had. And I'll withhold judgment on the movie until we actually see it. But just from watching the Oscars, it's a little rough.
Let's go into some of the comments here. We have Benjamin who says she looked silly as blank. We have Richard who says, careful, don't upset LT. LT's a big Ariana Grande fan. Is that still the case even after this weird phase?
He is, but something came up one day in Four Downs or something that they asked about, like whatever girl he was obsessed with, and he did not mention Ariana Grande. So I feel like he's kind of fallen off that wagon.
Maybe he's moved on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of different reasons. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons for that, but she does look a little rough right now. So
I hope she gets better because I know that she has. I know she went through a divorce and then she's kind of had an affair with her co-star allegedly.
Something's not right. I'm just putting it out there. Something's not right.
I mean, she is a really pretty girl, and I hope that she gets back on track, and I'm sure she will.
Let's see. We have Little T who's in the chat. We appreciate that. Excited about the Oscars. Little T, I assume, saw none of the Best Picture nominees this year because I don't think she's seen a movie in 7 years. So we're going to get her back in the theater sometime soon. I promise that. We have Jody that says, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but let's give a yes or no here. Do you think Al Pacino forgot to read the nominees and just went Lieutenant Colonel Slade and took a flamethrower to the broadcast?
Weird segue. I thought maybe they had just done all the movies. What if it had been the wrong one, like in La La Land? I wouldn't be surprised because the way he was holding the envelope, you couldn't really tell.
No, I thought it was a hilarious joke with Jimmy Kimmel, and now that Emma Stone won, was like, please burn that envelope before we do Best Picture because that's the one they used before. But it was rough. It was rough. I don't know why they keep getting. I get what they're trying to do with the older people coming out. It's like, it's been 50 years since they were up here the last time.
Quit doing it for Best Picture. Just quit having the retirement home come in for Best Picture.
It's so good with the older people. Like she was so gentle with who was it? She up
Tony
with
Bennett, yeah.
No, she was up there with Judy Garland too, and she was so sweet and kind.
Honestly, you know who needs to give out Best Picture? Just let Jimmy Kimmel give it out. He's the one person who's not going to mess something like that up.
Or Steven Spielberg.
Or just get Spielberg if he's going to do what he's doing. Just get him to do both.
Yeah, we got to figure out a solution here, because bringing out Warren Beatty and Al Pacino and all these guys from yesteryear to bring out the best picture, and I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to celebrate Hollywood's past. I get it. But there has to be some sort of wellness check on these guys before they come out there and start messing things up, because it is painful to watch on what is the biggest award of the night. It's the biggest award of the night. We got to get that fixed. All right. One thing I loved, and I thought of Laurel when I saw this, was they come back from break and they've been showing all these different movies that are nominated for Best Picture throughout the night, just to sort of play a montage of the film, so that way they don't have to do it when Al Pacino comes out and butchers the Best Picture award. They had Past Lives up there, and they're showing the Past Lives footage, and then they start playing the Beetlejuice theme, and I'm just thinking, do you understand what I'm talking about? I'm like, these two things don't go together.
Why was Michael Keaton, why was he like running to the podium and leaving poor Catherine O'Hara behind? Even she was like, come back.
Yeah, because the thing is, Past Lives is such like a slow, like
melancholy,
moving dialogue kind of movie. Like, it's one of those that for early in the year people thought it might win Best Screenplay too, and then just out of nowhere it's like, anyway, let's get back to it.
Beetlejuice theme. It was somehow successful marketing for Beetlejuice.
I would have it no other way.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that wouldn't have been brought up if I had not written it down, but that was a wild moment for me. Okay, let's get into right after that, back to back to back. And I said this on the show on Friday, and John, I want some respect here for this pick, because I said coming out of the Oscars, a movie that people are going to be talking about is going to be Poor Things. And tonight it won. If Oppenheimer's at the top of the list of movies that people are talking about right now, which they're probably Oppenheimered out, to be honest. And I'm an Oppenheimer fan, but it's run its course. It's been re-released 6 times in 6 months. How does that happen? Anyway, Poor Things was really the big star of the night, and it will have a second life on streaming. It dropped on Hulu this past week. It's going to have an audience that's going to find it and love it, because we both think it's one of the best movies of the year. What did we have it? I had it 4th on my list. You had it where on your list?
I have it at 5th, I think.
5th. So both top 5 movies. It won for hair and makeup over Maestro. It won for production design, which walking out of the movie, I go, this movie needs to win for production design. It is a beautiful film. The sets are beautiful. It's intricate. You can tell that this is stuff that isn't just CGI'd in, that it's actually rather tangible. And it won for costume design. This is a movie that had a dominant performance tonight, and we thought, well, maybe it'll just win in the technical categories, and then later on in the night, Emma Stone wins. But let's talk about those technical categories, John. I was so happy to see this movie get its flowers.
I was too. I think, it won, I think, 3 in a row, and one was makeup, which Maestro was the favorite to win. And I kept making the joke, it's all because of Bradley Cooper's nose and the whole thing. But, you look at Willem Dafoe's, the makeup and prosthetics he had to have on his face, and, the hairstyling for all the kind of wackiness and zaniness of that movie, that it firmly deserved to win that just as much as a movie like Maestro did. And then production design, Barbie was actually the favorite because of building the sets of like the dream houses and what
practical effects,
what Barbie land kind of looked like. And, I'm not the only person that's made this comparison, but a lot of people are comparing Poor Things to Barbie, but a very adult version of,
you can do a double feature and you'll get 2 very different feelings after watching them.
Watch Barbie first.
and only take your kids to Barbie if you're going to choose one. But, but you come out of both kind of seeing the practical effects of the cities they've built, what, the Barbie, Barbie land, Barbie world, whatever it was, and then kind of how they made very abstract versions of the various European cities they went through. Then once again, I have zero problem with Poor Things winning that over Barbie. I guess Barbie only actually ended up winning song because of that, because it was supposed to win some of those more technical categories. But, I like that it won those, because this movie, the thing with Yorgos Lanthimos' movies before, The Lobster was just a very practical thing. It took place all basically within like a hotel, essentially. The Favorite basically all took place within a castle. It's kind of all in one location. This is the first movie, at least that I've seen of his, that explored a lot of different scenery, and because of that, built a lot of elaborate sets, a lot of elaborate costumes and stuff like that. So I was glad to see it get its due.
And I feel like he's becoming more mainstream. I feel like we talk about Ari Aster and who's the Robert Eggers a lot. I feel like he's probably and he's an original A24 person too with The Lobster. I feel like he's kind of coming up too, as this movie has made over, I think it's made over $100 million, has it not?
Yeah, and
which is big
it is
for
the
a movie
Hulu.
like that.
The Hulu push is really helping that. I think that doesn't change award season because voting's been done for a little bit for that. But
Right.
I think from, like you said, we're Barbie and Oppenheimer now, both of them, to where Barbie's going to disappear and Oppenheimer's going to disappear for now, because once again, the people involved in those are going to go do plenty of other things. People don't know. If I say Yorgos Lanthimos to the average person, they have no idea who I'm talking about. The actors, yes, they know who Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, Willem Dafoe, people like that are. But this is a movie that, as we shift into 2024, and you're just turning on Hulu and turning on even Disney Plus, because they've integrated the two now, that you're going to see that movie over and over again. You are going to see that, and it's going to be the moment for the next bit, because, there's a chance, once Emma Stone beat Lily Gladstone, that put it into like, hey, this wasn't just a technical movie. It won a lot of different things, because Oppenheimer, the biggest winners always have to win both the acting, directing, screenwriting, best picture side of things, and then in front of the camera, and then the behind the scenes, to be like like what a Titanic did, to like what Lord of the Rings did, like what all these ones did. And Oppenheimer did that by winning cinematography and film editing and stuff like that. But when Poor Things didn't win an acting Oscar, it put itself in that same category.
And when we were watching and we were talking, as soon as Poor Things started winning, I told you, I said, I think Emma Stone's going to win the Oscar, just because I saw it. It's kind of like when La La Land lost several categories, and I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe this might not bode too well for the film. So when I noticed that Poor Things started winning more than what was expected, I was like, I think she's going to take it.
Two movies that should be looked at as having a similar fate tonight, after what was a lot of strong marketing buzz as being Oscar contenders early on: Maestro, Killers of the Flower Moon. Those two movies really went dry here, and we walked out of Killers of the Flower Moon going, yeesh, wow, I don't think that's going to contend. I got done watching Maestro on Netflix and went to John and go, how do you have this thing rated even as high as you do? And John, you're like, well, it had a good production quality, I guess, but it's not near as good as what I had hoped it would be. You were still disappointed, even though you had given it a much better score. I do want to talk about, we talked about costume design. One of the best presentation moments of the night was John Cena coming out as the streaker.
So good.
And
Yeah.
I thought it was hysterical. It shows Cena's range. It showed Kimmel was perfect as playing sort of the straight man in that bit. The costume change is playing right now on social media of what people saw. They were actually inside of the Dolby Theater watching the quick change group come out and put sort of the toga on him or whatever it was. What did you make of the John Cena bit? I thought it was hilarious.
We thought it was so funny, and I could see. I wonder if Dwayne The Rock was a little jealous that now. I think if you're going to be rating people in terms of likability, I think Dwayne might be third under John Cena and Batista, because I feel like after Black Adam, there's been like a big shift, especially because he did that kind of shady stuff, like lying about the numbers of how much the movie made, and then unfollowing the director, like the day that it came out on HBO.
You're exactly right. But when you've been at the top for so long, all you can do is lose ground. And he's definitely doing that. He's gone back to WWE. He's headlining WrestleMania in some capacity because he's a part of the biggest storyline in the company right now. But you're right, Laurel. Everything you said is correct. Black Adam was a big swing and a miss for not only him, but also for the DCEU and Shazam too.
And I've always really, really liked him. But then after that movie, there's that stuff where he didn't want to do the Shazam cameo, who's the person who plays Shazam?
Zachary Levi.
There was all that stuff with him when they talked about it at Comic-Con, then doing like kind of the petty things of unfollowing unfollowing DC, and then the director the day it came out on HBO Max, and then lying about how much the movie made when you could clearly see that like he had made up. And that's also, I think that kind of accumulated, and it just kind of soured people on him a little bit.
I would like to see John Cena, because he's definitely shifting into, I'm going to basically go into acting full time and do wrestling part time. But like, I would like to see him take that next step in his acting career. He started an OnlyFans, but it's like a spoof OnlyFans that he's like, hey, I'm going to scissor something, and he cuts construction paper with scissors or something. Like, it's really stupid what he's doing, but like, he's done good funny movies. Blockers was, I think, a hit
Blockers
overall
is
and a
good.
win for him. And we haven't seen Ricky Stanicky yet, but it's on the list to watch. It came out this past week. But like, I'd almost like to see kind of how Batista did. Try something serious. He may totally bomb in it. I have no idea, but I think his acting is just good enough that if he tried something serious, he could potentially pull it off. I don't know that The Rock right now could pull something serious off.
He's gonna try.
Batista clearly can pull something serious off, but that's like the one step I'd like to see. Like, he can be funny. Tonight was funny, and he can pull that off all he wants to. I think he's entertaining, but I like to see that next step for seeing it. And something like tonight makes me want to see it even more because, like, hey, you're really good at this. Let's take it to the next step.
The streaker bit was great, but we're going to get into what I actually thought was the best bit of the night here in a second. The Killers of the Flower Moon performance took place, and then we had The Rock and Bad Bunny come out. Bad Bunny, I'm sure, had practiced a million times to say the word Oscars and couldn't quite get it out when it mattered most. He couldn't figure out what to say, and The Rock is like, how do I not look like a bad guy for jumping in here and basically course correcting him? There's always a language barrier in these shows because you have these international feature films, which, by the way, that was what was announced, The Zone of Interest as Best International Feature. No shock there. The only thing that could have really given it a fight and would have won probably, from everything I've heard, is Anatomy of a Fall. But John, because it wasn't put up by France, it wasn't eligible for Best International Feature, even though it got a Best Picture nomination. We've talked about that angle 1,000 times. It's one of the biggest flubs in Oscars history when it comes to the nominating process, because France really dropped the ball with what was a smash hit.
There's a few different angles for when it comes to The Zone of Interest ultimately winning. Number one, it's not a German movie, even though it's straight up about Nazi Germany and is all in German. Number two, because there's another German movie nominated. Number two, the Anatomy of a Fall angle, because France put up another movie, and clearly it was more well received because the same lead actress was in both of them, but got nominated for Anatomy of a Fall. Anatomy of a Fall's director was nominated. It was nominated for Best Picture. It won Best Screenplay. Clearly, it had a lot more buzz behind it and had a cool dog to go with it, too, to get more votes.
Who was at the ceremony?
Who was at the ceremony, by the way? Was
that not pre-shot? That was actually the dog ended up there?
He was actually at the ceremony. I think maybe the clapping was pre-shot.
That was obviously
okay.
But he was actually at the ceremony. But because there was a whole riot when they said he couldn't come. But you may totally disagree with this, but I also think Japan made the wrong choice with their movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because Godzilla I don't think it would have been Anatomy of the Fall, but it would have had a fighting chance in a category like that because it did win an Oscar. It was incredibly well received across the world.
People loved it.
In America, it may be one of the best. It may be the best foreign movie as far as reception in America this year. So I have not seen Perfect Days. I do want to see it. It does look good from the previews, but I feel like that was also a huge misstep. That imagine if Anatomy of Fall and Godzilla had both been in the category, The Zone of Interest probably would have been third, honestly.
And
I'm sure the Japanese movie and the French movie that have been put up, even though I have not seen either one of them, are great. But they're always going to be remembered of having robbed these other two fan favorite films that have, in what is a year full of fan favorite films, Oppenheimer wins Best Picture. It is now, I believe, based on my quick research, the third highest grossing Best Picture winner of all time, behind Titanic and Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. It's ahead of Forrest Gump in its gross. And I'm sure if all of this is adjusted, you can make arguments, but just what the pure number was, it was a year where there were just a few box office hits, but those were also celebrated at the Oscars. It's a very rare thing to see.
Except the number two movie, they keep talking about Barbie's the highest grossing movie of the year, nominated for everything, great. Oppenheimer was third highest grossing of the year, nominated for everything, great. The second highest grossing movie of the year wasn't nominated for a single thing, including Best Animated Film with Super Mario Brothers. I know critically it was a bomb. It did not do well critically at all. It's got like a 50 on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever. But clearly people liked it overall because they voted with their money. And
I did.
Strictly for kids, it's just a movie that worked, period. It worked. And sorry, our dog was making noise. But clearly it's a movie that worked. And I just don't. Now let me say this. I don't know. There you go. See?
My daughter gave me these. She says, good luck on your live stream. Take these. So, I mean, it worked out perfect. She's going to love that this is on camera. But anyway.
Amazing to have a million Mario things and I have nothing sitting on my desk right now.
You can
But
do this little thing.
that's not Mario.
You have a better background.
Yeah. But yeah, now look, obviously Spider-Man's my pick, and it was well deserved to be in there. Boy in the Heron, same thing. I really liked it. It was a top 15 movie of the year for me. But Nimona was really good. I have not seen Robot Dreams, and Elemental. I feel like it came down to Pixar and Universal in that regard, Disney and Universal, and ultimately Disney ended up winning out because I guess Pixar typically is the one that you go with. But I can't believe it didn't get anything, and it didn't get not recognized at all, despite the fact that the other two highest-grossing movies clearly got recognized.
Laurel, I know this hit with you. To me, it was the best bit of the night, and it hit with me so much. Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling going back and forth.
I'm going to say something that's really controversial. I think that they have more chemistry than like she has with her own husband. Like, I know I don't dislike John Krasinski. I really am a fan of The Office, but it's really funny that like I feel like his wife has elevated him like so much because now she's in The Devil Wears Prada. She's been, I believe, nominated multiple times. But I'm very excited about Fall Guy because they have great chemistry.
I hope it's good. I'm not sold on it yet. I hope it's good. It has the ingredients to be really good. I just haven't seen a trailer yet that I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see that. I'll see if that changes.
Popcorn movie. Like, it ain't gonna win any awards or anything, but it's a good movie. I feel like to go, hey, let's just go have fun in the movies. It'll be good for that.
And how fun is it that you get to get two of the people from Barbieheimer in like one movie?
We'll see if it generates the same box office results. Let's get into some more things that happened, including all the best supporting actors coming out. We talked about this earlier, John. I thought Sam Rockwell honoring Robert Downey Jr. was really cool with that Iron Man 2 reunion. But Tim Robbins and his flub when he went to go honor Robert De Niro and said an Oscar-winning performance. I mean, Oscar nominated, and everyone's like, oh my gosh. This is the one thing you can't say is that this one's going to win an Oscar because the entire world, including Robert De Niro, knew that he was not going to win the Oscar for this performance out of Killers of the Flower Moon. What did you make of that moment? Did it make you sweat a little bit? We always get those during these award shows.
Oh, cringy.
See, that's once again why I think you get people that are straight up friends and can deliver a really good thing about that individual person. And look, Tim Robbins and him may be best friends. I honestly don't know, but it was a little odd. And once again, we talk about Divine Joy, Randolph being one of the biggest locks, if not the lock. Robert Downey Jr. was close to being a straight up lock, and the only ones that could have done anything would have been Ryan Gosling and maybe Mark Ruffalo, not Robert De Niro, who is one of those. He's kind of like a Denzel, like he pops in there, every now and then because he's just good at everything, pretty much. He just
have you seen Bad Grandpa? Oh no, I'm sorry.
It's like that's not ever going to happen. And when he said that, now you talk about the upset of all upsets. That would have been the upset of all upsets if he had done it.
Can you imagine the conspiracies if he ends up winning and it's like, oh my gosh, Tim Robbins knew and he tried to warn us?
Yeah, the old PricewaterhouseCoopers envelopes, they never see it until it's actually open, which is, there's no way that's true that nobody sees it, but it's like, oh, Tim Robbins of all people saw it.
Isn't it long rumored that people think Marissa Tomei didn't really win for whatever it was, the movie that she won for?
My Cousin Vinny.
That's like a rumor that's like persisted that they like read the envelope off wrong or like the person just said it incorrectly.
La La Land. Oh wait, sorry.
We know that happened.
That's the one thing John will always have to hurt me with.
And
Laurel.
I like Robert Downey Jr. Were you a little surprised at how he went up there and just kind of snatched that award?
Yes, he was very relaxed. That's his mantra, sort of, is to be a relaxed person who can find the right words at the right time. He's not going to reach for a speech. He's not going to get overly emotional. He plays the cool guy in every room, and he did that again tonight. I didn't see it as being Ariana Grande level odd, but I saw it as being like if this goes south, it could go south in a bad way because he's just trying to wing it. You can tell.
I thought the difference between him and Cillian, like Cillian Murphy was so sweet and so nice, like thanking Brendan Fraser, like taking and like shaking everyone's hand.
Robert Downey Jr. has that. He's like Tony Stark in real life. Like that is Robert Downey Jr. And he walked up and so like Kiwi Kwan was holding it up and he goes, all right, and went up to the microphone. Where Cillian Murphy was like, "Oh my God, Brendan, thank you so much for the award."
A little odd, or I mean, not odd, but you just noticed is that I think that who was it that won last year?
Kiwi Kwan.
He was trying to kind of get his attention, and like Robert Downey Jr. wasn't like giving it to him. Because I would think that thank the person that won. I don't know. It was just something that you just kind of noticed. But
you saw him walking off. I don't know if you noticed this, but as he walked, she pointed out he snatched the award out of his hand and didn't say thank you to any of the people up there. Whereas Cillian Murphy thanked every single person and gave him a hug and everything. But I could tell as they're walking off stage, he was trying to talk to him. Robert Downey Jr. was trying to talk to him and all the rest
of them. Selfie at the end,
and being like, "Hey, I was so stinking excited for this that like I just went for it. But hey, thanks a lot." And you can tell he's trying to do it after the fact, but in front of everybody, it's like he got to snatch that award out of his hand. It's like that's Tony Stark Robert Downey Jr. for you.
That's why you couldn't see him as playing anything else in Oppenheimer other than Tony Stark again. That is a shot at you for the La La Land stuff.
Hey,
Let me say
Han
this.
Solo was great in the movie though, because I don't ever think he's Han Solo. Sorry.
Okay. Christoph Waltz talking about Ryan Gosling. I don't know why, but I want some sort of like podcast where he just talks about people like Ryan Gosling or does celebrity culture or celebrity. The way wasn't that it was like oddly. I don't want to say it was just refreshing to hear Christoph Waltz and his presentation talking about a movie like Barbie and Ryan Gosling. I found that to be just very therapeutic for some reason. I don't know why. I'm a weirdo. And then that's when you had the Anatomy of a Fall Dog clapping was after Robert Downey Jr. won, which was a nice little thing. When they come back from break, we have a Twins reunion with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I wrote down with the Penguin and Mr. Freeze before they started even mentioning it. And I was like, yes. But then I'm like, wait, Michael Keaton wasn't even Arnold Schwarzenegger's Batman. What are y'all doing?
I was like, wait, he wasn't. I was like, that was George Clooney, Val Kilmer. Which one was that? I was like, it's not him.
I didn't realize how dumb that Batman and Robin really was until Arnold pointed out. He's like, he killed me by the one that could really harm me. And it's like hate. It's like, no, love. And I was like, they had that whole storyline where he was trying to save his wife. And really, I think Poison Ivy like killed his wife, right? That was the whole thing.
Tried to. It's bad I know that. I was so happy to see it, but can we get Danny DeVito a damn belt? Can we make that happen? What's going? Am I the only one that noticed he's pulling up his pants every 5 seconds? Is it Jersey Mike's that's doing it to him? What's going on here?
And what killed me was she mentioned how we got a lot of Super Bowl commercials. You know, those get played for the next month and a half or so after the Super Bowl. But Arnold's State Farm commercial, you know, it ends with Danny DeVito coming out and correcting him. Same kind of thing, a Twins reunion, and then they just constantly showed the Arnold part and never showed Danny DeVito. And I remember thinking, they're not showing the Danny DeVito part. I feel like it's funny seeing little short Danny DeVito walk out there and correct him at the end, and literally coming back from that commercial break when I thought that's when the two of them appeared on screen and ended up doing the same thing together. So I was glad they actually got to put them together after snubbing Danny DeVito all night.
Yeah, I loved seeing the reunion. I loved seeing the best editing going to Oppenheimer and how much that editor was fangirling over being up there with the Twins cast. But we also got the Best Visual Effects Award. It was one of the upsets of the night in Godzilla -1. It was a 2-horse race going in, but Godzilla -1 being a $12 million movie to win Best Visual Effects. As much as I talk about Oppenheimer being a movie that grossed a lot at the box office and won Best Picture, which is a rare thing, for a movie to be made for so little money and win Best Visual Effects, I would love to know if it's the lowest budgeted movie of all time that won Best Visual Effects of the modern era. I would love to know that because it has to be, John. It has to be. That thing's competing against $100 million movies.
Yeah, I mean, Guardians was in there, so you know how much the big budget Marvel movies take. But let me say this: the creator had better visuals than Godzilla, but cost 8 times as much to make because it cost $80 million to make. So that's the whole reason Godzilla won this. Because really, we talked about the reason Godzilla -1 works is it's not about Godzilla. It's about the people that, Godzilla is affecting. But one of the coolest things I like when they show this category, and they did it with Mission Impossible, Guardians, all the different ones, they show what the original scene looks like. And then they kind of do the overlay of like the webbing and then the first phase of color and everything until it gets to the final shot. I like seeing that. When you see that one scene when Godzilla really comes through and destroys the town before he does that atomic breath in the movie, that shows how much that one scene that would cost Disney or Universal or anybody else doing that movie would have spent $50 million on that one scene alone, and the whole movie cost them $10 million to make, and that's not the only Godzilla scene, obviously. So that I have no problem with it winning, although I do think the creator was very, very good, strictly from its visual effects perspective. So I was glad it got a few nominations in there tonight.
Did you see where they had the little Godzillas they brought up on stage? Oh.
I saw that for sure, and I tried so hard to have respect for the speech, Richard wrote in and said the Japanese guy trying to read in English was rough. And it was, but every now and then he'd say one word perfectly and everybody would be right back in like, oh, yeah. And it's like, Oscar. Yes. Yes. Good job. Anyway, but there's those things always exist, but as painful as it was for me to reenact it, it was to watch it in real time, I promise. Okay. We had Guillermo coming out, handing out tequila, which was a nice little sponsorship tie-in, and it was really funny. Charlize Theron, he was talking about being his wife. I thought it was charming and funny. You had another wonderful bit. The three of them are so good. Kate McKinnon and America Ferrera come out, and they start talking about sending nudes to Steven Spielberg. I was not expecting that tonight going into the broadcast.
Yeah, when Kimmel made the comment about, hey, Spielberg, are you here to be nominated or do you have season tickets? And he's like, yeah, kind of a little bit of both. I thought it was pretty funny every time they kept pinning Steven Spielberg. He is a good person, I feel like, to be kind of that representative. And, hey, we're going to use him a lot. I feel like he kind of goes with it every time. There are some people, when they start making jokes on their behalf, they just shut down and they want nothing to do with it. They're not happy,
but he's always a good sport.
He's always one that's pretty good sport and did the same thing with the Kate McKinnon thing and all. And I didn't realize he produced Maestro, which is the whole reason he was there.
He's so universally known because who hasn't seen Jurassic Park and who hasn't seen Jaws, E.T., all these movies that I feel like transcend like generations, that he's a good one to pull to.
And him and Nolan together, it just felt powerful. Them hugging, them walking the halls, the amount of movies that they've made over the course of their careers. And it felt to me, and I know I'm a fanboy of Christopher Nolan, and I know there's a lot of Nolan that you love deep down inside, John, and you let it out every now and then. But it felt to me like a passing of the torch. It felt to me like a passing of the torch in a very monumental way. Even though Spielberg's still making movies, it just felt special. And
it does seem like Spielberg's producing more than directing now. He produced Maestro. He produced The Color Purple, which ended up only getting one nomination, I think, the whole night. But that was one that a lot of people thought might get Best Picture or whatever. It did kind of sort of feel like that. And I know, you're all on Nolan. I'm all on Denis Villeneuve as like the directors working today. But, I mean, I don't think anybody is ever going to pass Spielberg unless Nolan continues going for 50 more years doing the exact same quality that he's doing. Spielberg's by far number one. And I'm glad he is kind of taking it on stride and kind of just enjoying, hey, I'm the GOAT of this, and I'm going to just ride that wave as long as I can. And, yeah, I may not be directing the best movies, even though he still directs plenty of movies. I mean, normally when he does a movie now, I mean, I guess West Side Story, was in there a couple of years ago, but,
he had that movie about his life last year.
Oh, yeah, The Fabelmans, I guess. Yeah, I kind of forgot about Fabelmans. I didn't really win a ton of things, but, that's the kind of thing that, like, he's always going to get nominated, but he's not going to necessarily win a lot. Didn't he do The Post? I mean, they didn't get nominated.
He did War Horse.
It didn't win anything. So I like seeing him there. I like him kind of being that representative, and it was good to have him and Nolan up there together.
And Tim, this one's for you. I don't know if you felt the same way. I know that you're like huge on Oppenheimer, but whenever I think Christopher Nolan, I just think of The Dark Knight. I don't think there'll ever be another movie that like I think of I think of him and Heath Ledger and The Dark Knight. That's when I hear his name, that's what I will always probably think of.
And that's fine. That's fair. And John will always think of Interstellar, and that's just the way life is going to be. And I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that.
Hey, it's a compliment when you can all think of three different incredible movies.
No, but Tim, which one would you think of? Oppenheimer or Dark Knight?
Oh gosh, Laurel, that's a tough one. I am probably, if I'm going to watch one today, it's going to be The Dark Knight because it's way more consumable.
That's what I'll say. His Batman movies, those three, I especially like. I like the last one a lot, and then I also like Dark Knight. The first one's good too, but you can put those on any time. Like those are movies that you could always pull from. Like if you're like, I don't know what to watch, if you see that that's on Netflix or HBO Max, it's like, I'll watch Dark Knight Rises or I'll watch Dark Knight.
Yet to stream Oppenheimer. I know it's on Peacock. I've yet to stream it. I want to see it again in the theaters. I've tried so hard to forget about it. I saw it 5 times in the movie theaters and just loved it. I saw it in back-to-back one day on the fly because I loved it so much. I love Oppenheimer, but I've been trying to forget about it since July, August, so that way I can enjoy it again, hopefully, almost like a first-time viewing. I do weird things like that. Best documentary short went to The Last Repair Shop with a nice speech about music education. Best documentary feature film went to 28 Days in Mariupol Best cinematography went to Oppenheimer. Best live action short, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. I know you're a big Wes Anderson fan. He was not there tonight, but have you seen The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, Laurel?
No, I haven't yet, and I love him, and we just haven't gotten around. I loved Asteroid City. I'm shocked that it didn't get nominated for anything, but
I agree. I walked out of that movie very pleased with it.
But I am glad that now he can say that he's an Oscar winner, because I think he's definitely one of those that it was due for. There's several. I think Moonrise Kingdom, the Grand Budapest Hotel. Those are both that I feel like he could have won for director, screenwriting, even picture. But I think he finally got one, so at least you can add that.
Biggest reason I haven't watched it is because, he did 3 and released them all at the same time. They're like 3 30-minute shorts. I feel like when I sit down and watch one, I'm just going to want to watch the whole thing, and it's going to be like an hour and a half of sitting there watching it. And of course, you pick one. Disney always picks their one movie to push. This was the one that Netflix picked to push. And I feel like I always want to sit down and watch it. It's like, well, I'm going to want to watch all 3, so I just haven't watched any of them yet.
Michael wrote in, says it was nice nod after Nolan's speech to see the video of Spielberg's first win and Nolan's speech behind them as they walk backstage. I agree. It felt like a great, great moment. John Mulaney, you've already talked about how you would like to see him host the Oscars. To me, I think the Golden Globes needs him more than the Oscars. I feel like he can be a lot looser at that presentation and actually deliver when they are in desperate need of finding their next Ricky Gervais.
I will be honest. I think that Golden Globes from this past year, I think that's the worst one I think I've ever seen. It was bad. Like, that opening, like when you just saw the general, I think what tops it off was him blaming the writers after the writer's strike. That was blowing my mind that he said that. But 2, just to see the general disgust of the people in the audience. Even they didn't even do that with Ricky Gervais. I feel like people went along with it and they were like, oh, this is kind of shocking. With him, it was just like, this is not funny. And I don't like this.
Richard says Jimmy was boring as hell. And while you may feel that way, and it's perfectly fine, it's completely subjective, I think he does a good job of keeping the show in order and keeping it in line and keeping it moving and keeping it going. All the political stuff, I mean, that's what drives people away. I wish they'd just not touch on it at all, but he's incorporated it into his late night routine and he can't get away from it when he's hosting the Oscars either. But John Mulaney and his Field of Dreams whole bit was hysterical. I really like John Mulaney. It looks like he's putting on a little weight, which I'm not saying is a negative thing. I'm saying it is a positive thing. He looks healthier, in my opinion.
He had some rough years, so it's good to see him that he's healthy.
Yeah.
Kind of
not to do Robert Downey Jr., but I mean,
maybe even worse than him.
He's being very open about it.
But when you're gaining a little weight, that means that's not necessarily happening as much.
So think about it if you're Bradley Cooper. I just want to put this out there, okay? And I haven't heard anybody else make this joke. I'm going to be the first, and it may not even be funny. But imagine spending so many years of your life dedicated to telling the story of Leonard Bernstein, and you can't even win achievement in sound. You win to a movie that the absence of sound is what gives it the Oscar. I feel like that's very depressing if you're behind Maestro and you can't even win achievement in sound with the great Leonard Bernstein there and his life story to the zone of interest.
Because John and I have talked about this before. I almost wonder if now he's going to take the Jim Carrey approach. Because remember, for years, Jim Carrey tried to win an Oscar. Like, I honestly thought that he might have gotten one with Truman Show. But remember when he did that complete metamorphosis to be Andy Kaufman, Man on the Moon, that was going to be the big one. But there were several movies where The Majestic, he really tried. And then he got to a certain point and was like, I'm never going to win an Oscar, so I'm done trying, and I'm just going to go back and doing comedy. I kind of wonderful to see Bradley Cooper doing like Hangover 4, 5, and 6 now instead of just trying to win an Oscar.
I mean, hey, I'll take it.
Adam Sandler, after not winning for Uncut Gems, made Hubie Halloween out of spite. Yeah. And trust me, that movie's really, I'm a Halloween enthusiast. I'll watch anything Halloween, and I watched Hubie Halloween for the first and last time when I first saw it. It was not very good. Ariana Grande came out to present again. Once again, just weird. We've talked about that. Original score went to Oppenheimer. There was a little bit of a shot at video games at the end of that. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for not letting me play video games and make me play music because now I'm an Oscar winner. And I thought to myself, like, okay, it was nice and everything, and I love your music, but you didn't have to take a shot at the video game industry that's already right now being crippled by the threat of AI and all of these things that the film industry has fought against. Now video games are experiencing the same sort of thing, John. I hate when people take lowbrow shots at video games. It gets on my nerves. It seems like, what other groups can you point out? and say like, oh, you're a bunch of idiots that do this type of stuff. I don't know. It just felt like a shot to me.
Look, this may be a bad analogy, but this is the way I view it. When people like that take shots at video games, people don't take shots at the movie industry because of porn. I mean, people don't, even though that's a lowbrow version of, shooting movies.
Which, by the way, Christopher Nolan's porn addiction was brought up during the monologue tonight, and we're hoping for a speedy recovery. Continue.
Oh, that's fine. But there's a million things you can do when it comes to shooting movies. You can shoot brilliant movies like you had nominated tonight, or you can get all the way down to that and all of them between, and even worse things than porn out there that you could potentially shoot. So I don't like when people take shots just because video games has the best and the worst qualities of interacting with other human beings. And, you play Call of Duty and learn great teamwork and communication, or you can just yell, racist things the entire time you're playing because you're angry about losing. So there's a lot of different things when it comes to
video games. Is like anything in life. It can be a tool or it can be a weapon, and it's up to the user to describe which one it is.
And it's easier for people who don't pay attention to it to just assume it's a weapon. And that's what drives me insane. Because, look, I'll take Martin O'Donnell that did the music for Halo. I will take him over the vast majority of composers out there and the incredible music that was done for that. The soundtracks for all of those games when he was in charge. He didn't do all the Halo games, but he did the original trilogy. That's some of the greatest music I've ever heard in my life. It's the one thing I take exception with the movie Tar from last year, or from 2022, which was an incredible movie. Cate Blanchett was right there neck and neck for Best Actress, and it's all about her being a conductor. And the whole premise is once she falls off at the end, she goes and does a live symphony,
which is a good thing, though,
orchestra for Monster Hunter, the video game Monster Hunter. And there's the whole crowd is full of people. Instead of like snooty people going to the Oscar wearing tuxes, it's people dressed like, cosplay like characters from the video game. And it's like, oh, look how far she's fallen. It's like, don't crap on the music that you get in video games. There's some legitimate music that you get in video games that are right there with anything that you get with the movies that were nominated tonight. Look, I know Oppenheimer won. I thought Poor Things had the best music overall this year from what I heard, especially once they did the music in the little, little snippets they did.
But you agree, Oppenheimer doesn't work without music. Oppenheimer is a symphony. It really is, more than Maestro.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but like I bring up Poor Things, it's like, but Maestro sucks. It does.
No,
but
it's you took a shot at Oppenheimer. I've got to then come back here. Oppenheimer's music intertwining is what makes the movie work. Anyway, go ahead.
I think Poor Things is the same way. But I say all that to say Halo doesn't work without the music that's in there. Yeah. No game works without the music to make it hit. And I will put stuff like what Marty O'Donnell has done against anybody that was nominated tonight. So when there's a little bit of a shot in there, just makes me dislike Oppenheimer that much more.
Laurel, here's your moment. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just Ken. We got to see the performance. It didn't win for Best Original Song, but that performance, it just kept building. And Slash coming out. What's going on?
I saw the Twitter reaction, and there were people that were there, and they said that they had not seen anything like that in years, where it was like the entire. And I know we can look at certain people, like, Bradley Cooper was mad as hell watching that performance. Like,
Maestro, again, another shot at Maestro.
I mean, honestly, we know John Krasinski was mad as hell watching that performance, too. Like, we just all know. And I'm sorry, and this is me one more shot at Oppenheimer. The Barbie cast seems like they're so much more fun. Like, the Oppenheimer cast, I love all those people individually, but except for Killian, who seems like he is so sweet. But
except for Killian. Killian's having a good time. Killian. That's what Killian's doing the entire time.
Someone said that they love how he looks like he's being like held at gunpoint for like every
until he won, and then he backed off and was like, "Okay, I've won. I can be nice now. Yeah. I can actually smile and pretend like I'm enjoying myself."
But I think Ryan Gosling, not only was that such a fun performance, but think of how many doors that can open for him for like all those directors and people that were there that saw him not having a great time, but he can actually sing and dance. And I thought it was great that he was laughing through it. But the best, Tim, how about when he held up the microphone to Emma Stone?
That's what I was going to bring up.
It was in full circle moment.
I felt it. And then later on, when Emma Stone is thanking her husband on stage, I'm like, you need to be with Ryan Gosling. What's wrong with you? Anyway. So, we're La La Landers for life, Laurel. That is what we are. All right.
I remember Mahershala Ali giving away a thing. Sorry.
Hashtag
I just don't even want to. I don't want to give them any ammunition. We had the in memoriam segment after the Best Original Song was handed out. They came back, and Andrea Bocelli and his son Matteo were performing. And it was one of the first times, being a film fan first, where I was completely engaged in the performance of the In Memoriam than I was from actually what was going on to respect the lives that were lost this year. We'd seen an In Memoriam at all these different award shows. We knew who was on there. I guess that was part of it. And it was so beautifully done. And to have Andrea and Matteo in there was something that was very powerful, I thought. Does that kind of music work for you, John? I know you have different tastes and everything, but that was a heck of a performance from the greatest tenor on earth.
Oh, look, when I was back in my show choir days, that was a song that was going on my playlist all the time. But I think that was probably, let me finish this whole phrase. That was probably the single best In Memoriam ever in person. To view that in person, being there at the Oscars. The minute I went on Twitter, because I want to see if that was the Sun or not. I went on Twitter to see if that was the Sun, and all I could see was people complaining because it wasn't just full screen. Here's Carl Weathers and all of his roles. Here's so and so. And I get that complaint, so I won't say it's like, oh, that was incredible in general, because I understand you want to see the people that are being memorialized. You don't want to see them or the dancers or whatever. But I do think if you were in person, it could not have been better, from the going to different screens and then having the 5 screens across and everything. I mean, that was perfect from that angle. I understand, even though it didn't bother me at all, I thought it was a really good performance. I understand the complaint of, hey, I do too. People that died are the focal point, not necessarily the vocalists.
And I didn't get on Twitter at all, but I felt that way too. Not from a complaint standpoint, but from a, wow, we're getting a lot of the performers instead of what this is supposed to be. It's almost, that's how you know it was such a good performance. It overshadowed what the performance was supposed to do, which was to highlight all these lives that were lost and contributions that we've seen in cinema. But what a beautiful performance for sure. All right, the big awards. Best Actor, Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer. John, were you upset when Paul Giamatti didn't get the win here? Because there was an outside chance that he was going to play spoiler.
Yeah, there was, but it was still very much an outside chance. So, I mean, everybody except Best Actress, we'll get to that in a second, but, for the supporting and for Best Actor, it went exactly how we expected it to go, so I wasn't upset or anything. I would love at some point for Paul Giamatti to get it. I just feel like this was his best chance to potentially do one.
I felt very confident Cillian was going to win. I felt confident that Nolan was going to win for Best Director. I won't get into fanboying about them and their performances in Oppenheimer and what they did with this film and how awesome Nolan is, being the best director currently working. But I do have to ask this question. When did Forrest Whitaker get old? I was watching him talk, and I'm not trying to be cruel, but I mean, I guess everyone ages, but I never expected Forrest Whitaker to age, and it hurt my heart a little bit.
We talk about this all the time. It's so weird seeing people that we've grown up watching, and I'll say Denzel Washington, Tom Cruise, Will Smith. I mean, Forrest Whitaker's been around forever. It's so weird to see them now looking. Tom Hanks, looking so old. It's how has everyone aged so much in the last 5 years? It feels like.
I feel like Forrest Whitaker got old in Rogue One. I feel like that's the first time, because he played somebody old. Because that character in Andor, it's a prequel, so he's not quite as old looking in that, but he's missing the bottom half of his body and is on a ventilator and everything. It's I know they're making him play old, but then you see him off of the movie promoting it or whatever, and he still looks that old. And I feel like that's the point when it's yeah, he's getting up there, I guess.
Forrest Whitaker up there on the stage. My only thought was, man, I think he's getting old, and I'm not ready for that. Let's get into Best Actress after what were some awards that went the way that we all thought they would. It was a coin flip that favored Lily Gladstone a little bit going into tonight. I know the momentum, Laurel, you picked up real early that Poor Things had a lot of momentum as it's winning all these other awards. And I'm happy Poor Things got the amount of respect that it deserves. I think it's perfect with its streaming release from last week, and it'll really garner an audience that maybe didn't give it a chance during its theatrical run, much like a Saltburn. We've talked about that. Mm-hmm. But Emma Stone winning, when you heard the name announced, were you happy internally? Because Lily Gladstone was supposed to be the one thing that Killers of the Flower Moon won tonight.
And I think both. I think you're right. It could have been either one, and I think they've both had such a good award season, and I think that they are both like amazing. I feel like Emma Stone, as it was going forward, the only thing that I could kind of think about that might project her more, she was naked a lot in that movie. And I know you're not supposed to look at things like that, but if you do look back in the history of winners, like that is something that people look at. There was a lot of nudity in that movie that she had to put forward, and but the movie's good, and she was amazing in it.
I believe we're also getting the second best dog performance of the year after Messi, which is
she's
what we're seeing there. More about the dog from Anatomy of a Fall. That's what we're hearing there. But what did you think of the Emma Stone win, John? What was your reaction to that? I was very happy about it because when I walked out of Poor Things, I said, not only should it win for set design, but it should also win for Emma Stone. It's one of the best performances I've seen from an actress in years. And this was a year where there was a lot of momentum for both actresses, and which is why she said, I'm going to share this award with you. She knew it was really a toss-up between those two.
Yeah, Lily Gladstone was trying to act the happiest for her to win, but she's probably like, dang, that was it. Like I won the SAG award. I thought there was a chance I could come in and win that, but like I think Emma Stone's performance was probably the single best of the year period over anybody else. For me personally, Zac Efron's up there, but at least of the ones that were nominated,
I think I agree. I think I completely agree with your statement that Emma Stone was the best performance of anybody throughout the entire year, minus Messi the dog, which I hear is fantastic, but I have not yet seen Anatomy of a Fall.
Robert Downey Jr., yeah.
I think she's the actress of the future. Like when we watched Poor Things, like I just couldn't believe the movie. Like that was like a masterclass. Like it was so good. And she, I hadn't seen a performance like that. I don't even know if I could. I mean, La La Land was good, but I feel like this one was even better.
Oh yeah, this was definitely better than La La Land. I mean, that's not a shot at La La Land necessarily, but it was definitely better. Honestly, for me, I mean, Sandra Hüller was probably number 2 for me from Anatomy of a Fall. She was incredible in that. Lily Gladstone is down a little bit for me, probably 4th of the ones nominated. I haven't seen Naiad yet. It looks intriguing, but it's a Netflix movie I haven't seen. But I do think when you see Poor Things win the multiple production awards, because you go through a vote for everything, because Laurel said the minute it won like its 3rd production one in a row or whatever, like Emma Stone's definitely winning. And you can just tell the mindset of people has changed because, hey, Maestro maybe should have won makeup, Poor Things won. Barbie maybe should have won production design, Poor Things won. Clearly it's top of mind. Clearly Oppenheimer's going to win the things it's supposed to win, but this isn't the category. It has no competition, or Oppenheimer is not the competition. So who's that number one thing? Well, Poor Things is that number one movie behind Oppenheimer. And so I kind of agreed at that point. It's like, oh, I've completely changed my mind now. If I could bet on it right now, I would have thrown a ton of money on Emma Stone at like 2 or 3 to 1 where she was. And you can tell it was coming.
We have Michael who says, I loved Emma's speech. She genuinely seemed surprised and happy. She had to know it was a 2-horse race, and the genuine surprise. Her dress breaking in the back. Yeah, she mentioned it. She talked about it. She's incredible. She really is, and I can't wait to see what she does next. I think that's the feeling coming out of these Oscars. I didn't have this feeling last year. Last year, I felt, I'm glad everybody finally got their due. And this year, I'm going, I can't see what these people do next. All of these people.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Downey Jr., I'm glad he got his due. Almost everybody else, I can't wait to see what the next Nolan project is. I can't wait to see where Cillian Murphy goes now that his star has risen to the highest point of his career. I can't wait to see what Emma Stone chooses to release next, or what is coming out next for Emma Stone. And I can't wait.
Ryan Gosling finally wins for, because we know it has to happen.
This joke won't work as well now, but I can't wait to see what Al Pacino does next. Okay. Al Pacino announced.
I think Oppenheimer was half and half. Glad he's gotten his due, because there's plenty of opportunity in the past for him to get his due. I don't know if Cillian Murphy's been nominated before, but there's been opportunities for Robert Downey Jr. with Tropic Thunder to get his due. It was a little bit of both. Like, hey, is Robert Downey Jr. going to pop back up in the MCU? We don't know. We're looking forward to see what he does next. Same with Nolan, same with everybody. It's a little half and half. Like, they've deserved it well before now. Kind of like Leonardo DiCaprio. He deserved it well before he got it, and then you still were looking forward to what he's going to do next. With these people, it's a little bit of both. Emma Stone's the only one that's like, oh, she's gotten her due. She's going to keep getting her due.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to wind this thing up. I appreciate you guys geeking out over the Oscars broadcast with us for 90 minutes, going on 90 minutes now. Guys, it's been a lot of fun. But here's my question to you, Jon. A year from now, are we going to be talking about Dune Part 2 sweeping the Oscars like Oppenheimer basically did tonight? I say sweeping. Obviously, it didn't sweep, but the momentum coming out of tonight was it was Oppenheimer's year. We're going to be having that same sort of love fest over Dune Part 2, given that that's the only one of the potential Best Picture nominees that you've seen thus far, because Madam Web ain't it. We heard about those jokes all night long. They all landed. I thought John Mulaney's Madam Web joke was funny. Even after there had been Madam Web jokes made, it still landed. It sounded like something John would actually say while we're getting ready to do the Meltdown at 2 o'clock Central on this channel. But do you think we'll be talking Dune Part 2 a year from now in the same way in which we're talking about Oppenheimer tonight?
It's also funny from a guy who's in the Spider-Man universe playing a pig. But yeah. I think it's impossible in March to say, oh, this is definitely going to win Best Picture. I kind of lean that way with Everything Everywhere All at Once, but even still, it was like, you got to see what comes out the rest of the year. And ultimately, it did hold from this point of the year until the Oscars. I just don't know anything. If you're looking at movies now from like an epic standpoint, like Oppenheimer was an epic kind of movie, that there is nothing that's going to pass it this year that's on the slate as of right now, that Dune 100% is going to go win every technical Oscar. But, you know, that seems to be more what Denis Villeneuve movies typically win, as opposed to, you know, Blade Runner did it. I feel like the first Dune did it. You know, Arrival. Those movies haven't really won the big awards. So is this the one to finally put them over the top? Potentially, I would lean that way right now. I would say that, you know, and you can quote me on this and say, hey, you were totally off. But I would say going into the Oscars, so the over-under was 7.5 for Oppenheimer this year. It actually hit the under, because it lost one that it wasn't supposed to lose. But I would set the over-under at 6.5 next year for Dune. So whether you want to take the over or the under or not, I would set it at 6.5. And that's winning.
Just in the technical categories alone, it's going to get potentially 5 right there or something.
I just don't see it winning any acting.
Javier Bardem's going to put up a fight, I think.
That's not to say
Austin Butler.
That's not to say any of them are bad. I would give it to a lot of people in it personally. I just know an ensemble cast like that, it's a little tough. Yeah. Oppenheimer did it this year, but even still, it was only 2 of the 4 that it won, and it was nominated and didn't win in something like supporting actress. So, you know, Denis Villeneuve is getting to the point where it's like he's been nominated a couple of times. His movies are getting nominated.
If he doesn't get nominated for Best Director, he get snubbed for Blade Runner 2049?
I thought it was for Dune. He got snubbed one point.
It was Dune. It was Dune. Yeah. You're right. It was Dune. Oh.
So he's got to at least get nominated for all these things. I think there's a good chance based on just what we know is coming out. But I always say this, because I've had people ask me, well, so is Dune that good? It's going to win Best Picture next year? I mean, yeah, I think that now. But I say this. I didn't know Moonlight was even a thing until August of the year that it won. Because it's a small A24 movie. You don't know what's coming. You may can look deep in the A24 archive somewhere and see just the name of a movie, but you don't know anything about it. You haven't seen a trailer. You don't even know a cast half the time. How many movies like M. Night Shyamalan's new movie or whatever, we're still like, we don't know anything about it, but it's coming out at some point this year. There's a lot of movies like that. Not that M. Night Shyamalan's going to win Best Picture, but there's a lot of movies like that, and A24, Neon, those kind of places are the ones that do it. That there's some movie in there that we aren't even remotely thinking of or even knows exist yet, that's going to be a player for Best Picture. Whether Dune beats that or not, who knows?
You're exactly right that we still have a lot of the year left. We just got done with this 2023's Oscars. We got a lot of time here. Will Dune Part 2 really be a contender come next year's Oscars? I can't wait to see how that storyline goes. Jon will be recapping it thanks to our title sponsor. That's MyBookie.
Yeah, you see it right here. MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag. Use promo code next round. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Played a lot of NHL today leading up to the Oscars. Hey, I even played the Oscars and won a little bit too. Although I didn't win with Lily Gladstone. I thought, hey, the momentum's there. Guess what? They took my money on that one because Emma Stone, the rifle person, did end up winning there. So go to mybookie.ag and use promo code next round.
If you haven't seen Poor Things, if you haven't seen Anatomy of a Fall, they're about to both be streaming on Hulu. Poor Things already is. Laurel, thank you so much for being a part of this.
I love being with y'all. It's so much fun.
This is great. And we really went through We went through about everything. I'm going to let you guys go take care of the dog, and I'm going to remind everybody to please like and subscribe. Join us live daily throughout the week at 2 o'clock Central. Guys, y'all go get your beauty rest, and I'm going to go watch Oppenheimer for a 6th time. Okay. Daylight savings time actually cut into my Oppenheimer viewing probably, but y'all have a good one.